Valpo's Cooper Schwieger, say that 5 times fast. Valpo's Cooper Schwieger has hit the portal, getting interest from a lot of schools. The top five that are out for him right now: Michigan, Kansas, Baylor, Villanova, and Nebraska. A good list. Going to be a step up for Schwieger going from the mid-major ranks of Valpo to he's got a ton of high major options. Break this down for us, Riley. What should we know about Schwieger's game in the first place?
Well, for one, I think it's clear that he's benefiting from having the name Cooper just after what Cooper Flag did this past year. That was like my first thought when I saw this kid's interest in his offers and everything. I mean, granted, I judged him based on his headshot and the fact that he was at Valpo and he's getting Kansas interest. But then I went to the film, did a deep dive of it, and his game, I mean, I would say he's relatively like a stat sheet stuffer. He's a lot of his scores came on post seals to where I guess I can kind of see the fit if he does end up at a Kansas type school where you're gonna get some looks out of high low. He's like pretty good around the basket. I would say what most stuck out to me in the tape that I watched was just his touch, like 5 feet and in. I think he shot below 30% from three last year, though he made a few, but I think his form looks really unorthodox. It's a high release, but it almost looks like he's pushing the ball. And I would say like his base is consistent, but just the shot itself is like I struggle to see it
Mhm.
translating up a level. But that being said, I think it's like the rebounding numbers that should give people that probably get some interest and the height and the touch around the basket. Like he could be an offensive weapon who's able to carve out a role as like a bench big at the next level. But even beyond that, I guess when you look at the Missouri Valley transfers over the past few years, it has a decent hit rate.
Mhm.
Even
Oh
with
yeah.
Nebraska being in there with how they kind of struck gold with Rink Moss, that had me wondering if they were just going back to that well. But when you look at Marcus Domask, Lance Jones, Jacoby Gillespie, Will Richard, Malik Dia, I think there's another Belmont transfer I'm missing in there somewhere, isn't there?
How are those Belmont teams not better, by the way?
I know, seriously. Also, Ralph, you missed my joke. Gillespie, Richard, Dia. There's one more Belmont transfer who I can't quite put a name.
Yeah. Sorry.
The only one who didn't translate seemingly K Tyson, but yeah, it is. I do think the Missouri Valley has a weird. There's something interesting there where guys have a pretty high success rate to that has me wondering like, could whichever team lands Schwieger find something?
Yeah, Schwieger 6'10". I think he's got the bodies listed at 235. I don't think the physicality of power conference level is going to intimidate him at all. Average just under
Hmm.
16 points per game. For his career, he's averaging one made three per game on 33% shooting, which is not somebody who you'd call a sniper by any stretch. But that's a big who can reliably stretch the floor for you, right?
Yeah,
Add that with his 2 blocks per game last year, the fact he started every game for Valpo since he got on campus there, like that, there's some pedigree there, and I think some of these
mhm.
bigger schools like that as well. He's proven himself to be a very valuable piece at that level.
Yeah. I think he like moves decently well on the roll. Like it looks like he has decent offensive awareness. I will say the big concern for me is just the athleticism because I think in the Valley he shot like his 2 point percentage and his percentage around the rim is really good, and I stand by it. I think he has really good touch, like in the paint and everything. But I do think in the Valley he was able to sort of use his size to score over dudes, and that's not really going to translate up to the Big Ten or the Big 12 should he find himself at that level. He also only had 13 dunks last season, which is probably the biggest concern I would have, just kind of furthering those athleticism concerns. When he does have a dunk, it's like he's kind of flashy with it to where it's like, oh, maybe this white guy has a little something to him. But when you look at those raw numbers, that to me is my biggest hurdle in seeing him translate as, is can he be anything more than a guy who can make a mid-ranger off the short roll or get you a couple rebounds, score on some putbacks. Like, I don't know if you're just going to give him the ball on the block and let him go to work. Or even again, like I mean, he probably isn't someone you can just leave wide open on the perimeter, but just with his like shot form, I have some concerns about even how much of a weapon he'll be as a pick and pop big, like if you're regularly using that.
Do you think he's like a power conference starter level, a solid contributor who can play like 20 minutes a night, even if that's off the bench? Like, how do you? Obviously, that'll matter where he goes, how that plays out. We'll go through that here in a second. But just how do you project him for power conference level?
I I see him as like a 10 to 15 minute guy.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Okay.
You have any thoughts on that?
Well, some of these schools are not kind of wanting that. I think they'll want him to be maybe seventh guy at worst. Because you look at the list, I think Kansas wants a second guy next to Badunga or who can rotate with Badunga, where you're not going to worry about his athleticism because Badunga's got
Hmm.
plenty of that for you. Michigan, I think the Michigan one's interesting. I want to start with Michigan here because I think if you like had some fuzzy footage, you might think that there's some Danny Wolf in there, not with the handle standpoint, but you look at a big guy from a lower level who can do a little bit of everything. I wonder if Dusty May Michigan see him as filling that kind of role, being able to do some similar things.
Yeah. Oh man, maybe I don't know. I need to be
It, it's
sold
it,
more.
it
Like,
Schwieger is much more of a post guy than Wolf is. So there's some of that, but I think the ability to step out and stretch it, like he's almost like a Vlad Golden type role where you're going to put him in the more traditional post spot, but try
mhm.
and get some of the shooting and rim protection and potentially passing that Wolf gives
I
you, but from a post spot and not from the same way that Wolf does.
Yeah, I could see that where I definitely wouldn't. I mean, maybe with Dusty, he's thinking he just struck gold with Danny Wolf, finding the guy at the mid-major ranks to where maybe he can go 2 for 2 with Schwieger. But I do see him more like fitting the archetype as Golden than Wolf, just because Wolf is
Yeah,
unique, and we might not see a player like that for a while. But yeah, I think he averaged close to 2 assists a game, to where there is some passing chops and some feel there, to where yeah, maybe there's a little untapped potential that Dusty could unlock should he end up in Ann Arbor.
yeah, it's going to be a weird combo with both because I don't know how you try and utilize. Oh, Dusty May is one of a number of different ways. I'm sure he could figure it out, but he's trying to replace essentially two bigs. Schwieger being high on their list, I think, is a sign that they think they can utilize some of those skills. The Villanova fit is interesting, considering that we don't know who Villanova's head coach is going to be at this point. But Nebraska and Baylor, to me, represent two entirely different like styles of options for Schwieger, right?
You said,
Like
mm-hmm.
at Baylor, I feel like you're going to rely more on his rebounding and have him be that true interior presence.
Right.
Nebraska to me strikes me as you're bringing him in there to be a little bit more of maybe not the guy, but have a much bigger role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Nebraska to me feels like the most natural fit, just with the ability of Ringmass and the way that he thrived under Hoiberg. And I think they clearly need an interior presence. And they've had some good players these past 2 years on the wing in particular. But I think they really struggled without Mass this year. That was clear to see that like Burkett Bayou Tunsil, he was. I always struggle with that pronunciation. I apologize to Nebraska fans. I know he was a little bit up and down. And I mean, when he wasn't in there, they had Andrew Morgan, who I think was more of like a defender, not really the most, or Braxton Mia. Like neither of those guys really gave you much on the offensive end, to where, assuming you bring back, I guess both of those guys are out of eligibility. But maybe if you bring back Buchtenzel and you compare him with Schwieger, that could be something that'd be interesting. Although I guess Rink Mast, he might have a medical redshirt year coming.
They're fighting for that, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. We'll see. Who knows? It's hard to keep track with, because he would. I mean, yeah. If he got a medical redshirt this past year, he would have one more year of eligibility. He was listed as a junior last year for Nebraska. Maybe that's the
Yeah,
route you go. Is just like pair him with Schwieger and let Schwieger learn under him for a year and then be prepared for a bigger year. Um,
be a fun duo.
Also, this is on me, but a quick Twitter search of Schwieger today looks like Clemson has entered the race for him, and Northwestern too.
I like I actually like both of those fits, and
I do too.
I think that's probably more realistic too than the
Hmm.
Michigan Kansas tier. I feel like whenever you have interests, right, and you see these lists that are interests, there's varied levels of interest. Or if you've ever put together a recruiting board in College Football 25, you know that there's going to be guys who are higher up than others, and depending on
Right.
school you're at, I'm gonna guess he's higher up on like Clemson and Northwestern's board than
Hmm.
maybe Michigan or Kansas's. That being said, I also the fit at Clemson in particular with Brad Brownell, just off the rip, I love.
I do too. I think like Clemson, just after what they did with Ian Shefflin and PJ Hall last year, and Ian Shefflin and Victor Locken this year. Any guy who's like has a back to the basket game with like a little bit of playmaking chops and a little bit of a perimeter game. And I'm going to send him to Clemson if they're in, just because there's two spots you can choose from. There's like versatility and a scheme that you can sell to where
Yeah.
I would like that a lot. And especially if you compare him next to Locken still has another year, doesn't he? I'm not making that up.
Believe so.
Oh, Locken's a senior. Dang, both Locken
Yeah,
and Shefflin are both seniors.
I know they had to replace a lot in the front court.
Yeah, yeah. Man, because I'm like that. If you could find a shot blocker to pair with him, and I know his block rate's decent at Valpo, but I would want a little more security of a shot blocker who played at a higher level to pair with him. I could see that pairing working out really nicely.
Yeah, I think the lock and roll is kind of what you would hope to slide him into.
Hmm.
Because Locken had basically the same 3-point rate, attempt rate that Schwieger did last year, and he came in averaged 11 and a half, 6.5 boards, shot much better, 37.5% from three, but the year before he was 25% at Cincinnati. I think it's pretty easy to slide him into that same kind of lock and roll and
Right.
hope you get the same kind of guard play that Clemson got this year.
I'm with you. I think that's going to be my favorite fit.
I think so too. All right. But anyways, Schwieger's got a lot of good options. We'll see where he ends up. We'll be monitoring this on the channel throughout his recruitment. So make sure you like and subscribe.
It is March, and that means that March Madness is upon us. And if you are looking for a place to play, Underdog Fantasy has you covered. Sign up and deposit using code SLEEPERS, that's code SLEEPERS, to receive up to $1,000 in bonus credit plus a free pick. Head over to Underdog Fantasy today and use promo code SLEEPERS to take advantage of this amazing offer.